Our people were prisoners in their own country. We could not vote. We had no voice. How could we call this justice? I stand before you today, not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of the people. Our journey to freedom is not over.
Nelson Mandela was born on July 18, 1918, in the small village of Mvezo, South Africa. His birth name, Rolihlahla, means pulling the branch of a tree, a phrase that, in colloquial terms, translates to troublemaker. Little did anyone know that this child would grow to become one of the most important revolutionaries of the 20th century. Mandela was born into the Thembu royal family, a lineage of respected leaders. His father, Gadla Henry Mfakanyiswa, was a chief and counselor to the Thembu king. His mother, Nosekeni Fanny, was deeply spiritual and instilled in young Mandela a strong sense of discipline and morality.
My father always taught me that leadership is not about power. It is about service. When he passed away, I was placed under the care of Chief Jongintaba Dalindyebo, who took me in as his own. Under his guidance, I received an education, an opportunity denied to many of my people.
Mandela was sent to Clarkberry Boarding Institute and later attended Healdtown, a Wesleyan secondary school. He was an excellent student and went on to enroll at the prestigious University of Fort Hare, one of the few institutions that allowed Black South Africans to receive higher education. However, at Fort Hare, he experienced his first real political awakening. Students protested against the school's rigid administration, and Mandela found himself caught between following the rules and standing for justice. When he refused to abide by university policies, he was expelled.
I had a choice. Submit to injustice or resist it. Even then, I knew that silence was not an option.
Not wanting to submit to an arranged marriage, Mandela fled to Johannesburg in 1941. The city was a world unlike anything he had known, vibrant, bustling, and deeply divided. The racial hierarchy was painfully evident, with Black South Africans confined to menial labor and squalid townships. Determined to fight against this injustice, Mandela took a job as a law clerk while pursuing his law degree. It was during this time that he met Walter Sisulu, a businessman and political activist who would become one of his closest allies.
Mandela had something different, a fire in his heart and a belief that freedom was not just a dream, but a right worth fighting for.
In 1944, Mandela joined the African National Congress, ANC, and co-founded the ANC Youth League, determined to mobilize young people in the fight against apartheid. Apartheid, introduced in 1948, was an institutionalized system of racial segregation and discrimination enforced by the white minority government. It stripped Black South Africans of their rights, dictated where they could live, work, and even whom they could marry.
Our people were prisoners in their own country. We could not vote. We had no voice. How could we call this justice?
Mandela and his comrades organized boycotts, strikes, and peaceful protests, believing in nonviolent resistance. But the government responded with brutal force. Protesters were beaten, jailed, and even killed. In 1952, Mandela and Oliver Tambo opened South Africa's first black law firm.
We saw case after case. People arrested for simply existing in a world that saw them as lesser. The law should protect, but under apartheid, it was a weapon against us.
Despite peaceful efforts, oppression intensified. In 1960, the government massacred 69 unarmed protesters in the Sharpeville massacre, shocking the world. The ANC was banned, and its leaders were hunted down.
We had hoped for justice through peace. But when a government only understands violence, what choice do we have?
Mandela co-founded Umkhonto we Sizwe, Spear of the Nation, the ANC's armed wing. Its mission was sabotage, not terrorism, to strike government infrastructure without harming civilians.
We did not take up arms out of a desire for war, but because we had no other choice. A government that refuses to hear its people must feel their resistance.
In 1962, Mandela was arrested and sentenced to 5 years in prison. A year later, he was put on trial again, facing the death penalty in what became known as the Rivonia trial.
I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I cherish the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony. It is an ideal for which I am prepared to die.
Rather than execution, Mandela was sentenced to life imprisonment on Robben Island, where he would spend 18 years in brutal isolation.
Even in prison, he remained a leader. He taught, he inspired, he refused to be broken.
For 27 years, Mandela remained behind bars, but his spirit never faded. The world began to rally around his cause. Protests erupted globally, and international sanctions crippled South Africa's economy. In 1990, the unthinkable happened. Nelson Mandela was released.
I stand before you today, not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of the people. Our journey to freedom is not over.
In 1994, South Africa held its first democratic election, and Nelson Mandela was elected as the nation's first black president.
We must forgive, but never forget. Our greatest weapon is not revenge. It is reconciliation.
Mandela's presidency was dedicated to healing the wounds of the past. He established the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, allowing victims and perpetrators to confront apartheid's horrors and seek justice. After serving a single term, Mandela stepped down, choosing to lead by example, proving that power should not be clung to, but passed on. For the rest of his life, he remained a global advocate for peace, equality, and human rights, fighting against poverty and HIV/AIDS.
It always seems impossible until it's done.
On December 5th, 2013, Nelson Mandela passed away at the age of 95. The world mourned, but his legacy remained, a beacon of hope, a symbol of resilience, and a reminder that one man's courage can change the course of history. He was more than a leader. He was a revolution in human form, a man who walked through fire but never burned, a warrior who won not with weapons, but with wisdom. Nelson Mandela was not just a name. He was a movement, a light that led South Africa to freedom. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like, share, and subscribe to History Portal for more historical stories.